Hi, I'm Nicole Weinberger. I am a sales manager at MobileFuse. We are an in-app mobile and CTV network. I'm here today with Caroline Proto, who will be answering a few very riveting questions for us around marketing and the advertising industry. And I will let her introduce herself, and then we'll kick things off and get it going.
Perfect. My name is Caroline Proto. I am the Director of Global Media at Luxottica. For those of you who don't know what Luxottica is, we own brands like Sunglass Hut Lens Crafters, Pearle Vision Target Optical, Ray-Ban, Oakley, Persol, many others, as well as the licenses for brands like Prada, Versace, Michael Kors, and Dolce & Gabbana, to name a few, for all of their eyewear and sunglass brands.
Great. So ready to kick things off?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to start off with a very broad top line question just to ease into things. How do you approach cross-channel marketing? I know it's kind of like a very broad and top line question, but there's so many different marketing channels nowadays, so many different priorities that marketers have. How do you approach it? Do you put any priorities in certain buckets? How do you approach that from a brand perspective?
It's a really great question. I think it's really interesting how we operate at Luxottica, where we actually have dedicated center of excellences for all of the kind of channels you think about in terms of a marketing funnel. I sit on our media center of excellence. We have a PR center of excellence. We have a performance center of excellence, even organic social, visual merchandising. Cool. All of us work, though, hand in hand and roll up into each of the marketing teams. So it really allows us to have experts that really focus on that individual field within the cross-channel marketing, ecosystem. But also, we really try to make sure that we are collaborative in what we're doing. One of the things that we also are really big about, especially I think in today's advertising climate, is quantifying what we're doing as cross-channel marketing.
Right.
So what we do is we invest in quite a bit of tools. One of the big ones that we invest in is a convergence analysis, which is really kind of a blown-out MMM that accounts for paid, owned, and earned marketing. It allows us to look at the different touch points of each of the cross-channel marketing points that you're working on and see kind of how they each play into each other. Because we know, for example, when you have TV in market, branded search will typically see an increase, which then affects e-com. And then when you have PR activations and the influencers are posting about what they're doing, you might see increase in traffic to store. But there's not really a lot of tools in the market that allow you to be able to plot that consumer journey. So we do invest in that. We typically will update it about twice a year. We also have many other tools. We have a video attribution analysis that we do that allows us to measure actual TV and streaming exposure, and we layer it with our foot traffic measurement data that we have and kind of use an API to layer those together to see how they affect each other. So really, I think investing in the right analytics tools has been big for us to be able to look at the role of that true cross-channel marketing funnel.
Right, and analytics is such a huge buzzword right now, and it's so important to make sure you're measuring everything accurately so you can then allocate budgets and prioritize appropriately.
100%. And in the economic climate that we're in right now, where you're getting tasked from senior management to do more with less, you have to be able to quantify everything you're doing. You can no longer have the spray and pray approach. So that is why I think it's been a really big undertaking for us at Luxottica to make sure we are vetting and investing in the right tools and also constantly auditing them. Because exactly what you're saying, analytics is becoming so hot, but there's so many tools that are popping up in the marketplace. But just because something is popping up and is new, and you have, tech companies who are saying we have this solution, doesn't mean it's the best. Right. But it could be the best. Right. And partners that you've been working with for a while may have antiquated data
test
sources.
And learn a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been a really big focus for us to make sure that we're not just investing in marketing solutions, but also in analytic solutions to prove out what those dollars are doing.
Totally. Now, you just mentioned a lot of different departments, a lot of different buckets of your media. So where do you see the most room for innovation? Would it be like, well, I know, and with everything changing so rapidly, it's kind of like a big question, but is it traditional media? Maybe, maybe not. Is it OTT and CTV platforms? Is it digital media? Is it social and influencer channels? Maybe for a brand like Luxottica, where do you see the most room for innovation and growth in those channels?
So it's really funny. I think it depends what you categorize as your term for innovation, because it's really funny when you say traditional media, it may, maybe not be it, but if you actually think about what's going on in the traditional media space from a linear perspective with the currency adoption and GRPs kind of being faded out into advanced audiences, that to me is really innovative. But when you think about a consumer perspective, that's really on the back end from a data and tech perspective. So that to them is not so much innovative. Right. But from a marketer's perspective, I think that's amazing. It's allowing us to take something that has really been operating in the same way for the last 50 years and completely flip it on its head to make TV a little bit more a one-to-one.
Right.
But so from my perspective, that's really innovative. But if I think about from a consumer perspective, things like artificial reality have been huge for us. I think just the nature of our product being, eyewear, whether it's lenses or sunglasses, it's really allowed us from an artificial reality standpoint. I mean, your phone is in your hand at all times. Your phone's in your hand, mine's in my pocket. It's nothing new. Snapchat has been doing, artificial reality lenses pretty much since its adoption.
Right.
You now see it rolling out with Meta and TikTok. And now there's even partners. We do quite a bit with multiple mobile partners that allow us to do artificial reality within our advertising to really close that path to conversion. Because if someone's trying it on, they already have an idea then of what they're interested in, whether they want to check out right there. Or for us, we really try to push people to go to our retail locations. It is still shortening that path to conversion because they are then able to have that consideration of, oh, I actually really love this individual product.
Right.
Here's my nearest store, which we have operating within our advertisement. Let me go try it on in person to make sure that it fits my face. So that's been big for us. And then I think the influencer space really did see innovation in the last few years with the growth of TikTok. I think if you think about pre-TikTok, we were actually seeing kind of a decline from the influencer perspective because the Meta and Instagram influencer culture was starting to become very, very sponsored, especially with the FTC guidelines, where consumers were kind of like, everything is sponsored now.
Right.
Then you had really the growth and explosion of TikTok. And now I think there's this really interesting intersection of authentic creators. I think even recently the term influencer has kind of become like taboo, and it's more the creator culture because you are creating very authentically within the social platforms, even within Instagram again. Sure. So that I think the way that you see brands working with creators as well as trying to kind of take a risk. You see a lot of brands send product without doing actual creator contracts and hoping for the best because then it does feel very authentic. And creators are like, I'm not being paid for this. I was gifted the product, but I actually really loved it. As a consumer, I'm like, oh, it must be a really great product.
Very true.
So I think there's a lot of different ways that innovation is happening.
I think we could talk about innovation for 100%. Hours because like you kind of alluded to, things are changing in this industry on a daily or weekly basis. And so I think innovation is such a large term, but I'm always interested from a marketer's perspective, like just where you see the biggest room for opportunity and from a brand, so I'm always curious to see, what your answers might be. So switching gears a little bit, but how do you stay relevant among the competition in your space? Are you doing anything new and exciting? Like, what can you share with us? Like, how are you staying top of mind for your consumers among the competitive set in your space?
100%. So I'm actually going to focus on one of my specific brands, which is Sunglass Hut. And I think, competition is growing every day. There are so many, especially for the sunglass space and eyewear space, so many DTC and social first brands that are continuing to explode in the market that are really coming out with a lower price point product. A brand that we really talk about and have been hearing a lot about recently is Gooder. And every time I talk to someone, they're like, it's just a lower price point. I can grab like 3 and I lose my sunglasses all the time and I can throw it in my car and throw it in my purse. And that's absolutely fine. And I think it's wonderful that there's so many products in the space for no matter what your price point is right now in this space. True. Because eyewear and sunglass protection is incredibly important. And I think that's something that as Luxottica, we also make lenses. We have machines that we do for doctors' offices. We just want to make sure that eyes are protected in the world. But for Sunglass Hut specifically, I think what we actually have really been focusing on because of the growth of competition is our in-store experience. Interesting. Because I may be biased, but I think some of our sales associates are some of the best in the business. If you walked into a Sunglass Hut recently, they work really hard to make sure that they're not pushing you into a product that's not right for you. And I think one of the selling points and one of our points of differentiation is that no matter what you're looking for at Sunglass Hut, there is a 99.9% chance you will find what you need because we have so many brands, so many products, and so many price points.
Right.
We have all the way up to luxury, you know, Prada, Dolce & Gabbana, Burberry, those are really big for us. But we also have so many brands, our heritage brands like a Ray-Ban, which we have our icons that have been around for years. I mean, the Wayfarer is phenomenal.
Classic.
And we've continued to evolve it. We now have the Ray-Ban Meta glasses that are the smart glasses. We have Oakley. So if you're someone who's interested in sports and you walk in the store and you're like, hey, I really like to play golf, our sales associates are very educated on what is the right product and the right lens. You know, we have Oakley that has the prism lens, and it really helps to make sure, you know, my brother is a big golfer, and he's like, it really does make a difference to be able to see the green.
Right.
Because of the lens. And if it's sometimes difficult to get that information from a social first or a website perspective versus walking into a store and having an educated sales associate who can hear exactly what you need, can then find you the right product and the right lens at your price point. So what we've been doing to stay relevant is finding ways to actually translate that in-store experience into our advertising. We recently launched a campaign with an endemic partner where we actually sent editors and content creators to stores and had them have a true, authentic in-store experience, document it, and are now using it in our advertising. We've sent some podcast hosts recently to stores and had them talk about it on their podcasts really authentically to be like, we want to hear about your sales, your true in-store experience. And it's yielded really strong results for us because it's exactly what I was talking about before about authenticity.
Yes.
We even had one of the podcast hosts who called out their sales associate by name on the podcast to be like, Wendy was so helpful. She found me something for a Christmas gift. She found me something for my next trip. I was like, this is exactly, I think, what we've been really trying to gravitate and move towards. So that's been big for us, I think, to keep our relevancy.
Great. And I think it's even important to note that from one of the sessions yesterday about how, from a younger audience perspective, especially from a Gen Z perspective, like making sure those in-person and in real life experiences are authentic and can stay with the consumer even after they happen, because then the consumer is more likely to go back to your brand and be loyal to your brand. So I think that's 100%. Super interesting point that you're making about that in-store experience. And I think that's a great way to stand out.
100%. Being true to your brand. Our in-store experience is what makes us stand out. It's what has kept Sunglass Hut around for, I think we're at 52 years, coming up 53. Doing what we've done since the beginning, because we really do pride ourselves on our in-store experience. Our in-store sales associates are our first line of defense. We support them in any way we can, even from a marketing perspective. That is my job, is to get someone into that store so the sales associate can make sure our consumers are having the best experience with us.
I love that. And I'll end on a little bit of a fun note. What brands out there inspire you right now? Is there anything you're loving? Is there anything you wish you were a part of? Is there anything that like just really made you go, wow, that was awesome? Like, what's out there that you love?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to, give major kudos to Solo Stove for their campaign from last week with Snoop Dogg. That I think is a perfect example of a brand figuring out how to capitalize on paid, owned, and earned. Allowing to have teaser and really create some buzz in the market about a celebrity, finding a celebrity that is relevant to your brand differentiation point of them being, smokeless stove, as well as taking a brand to the masses. I mean, Solo Stove has definitely been gaining in popularity, but I think by that partnership with Snoop Dogg, it just exploded it to the masses. Everyone knows Snoop Dogg. Now, Solo Stove is a household name. People are talking about it. I think brands that are also able to keep up with virality right now, with the growth of TikTok, things go viral and also lose virality so quickly in the market, I think faster than we've ever seen. So being able to be on trend is very difficult for brands. I think, you know, you have to give props to a brand like Skims. I would love to sit in a room with her marketing team to understand their approval process, because that team is able to get something live so quickly. When you think about something that's gone viral for a trend, in the beginning of the year with White Lotus, there was the explosion of the show. Not even a week later, she had the campaign with the two girls from the show. She's like, I loved watching them and I wanted to put them in Skims, and there's a whole campaign around it. Like,
it's remarkable, actually.
100%.
It really is.
I mean, what they did with Kim Cattrall, because she got obviously a ton of press going on with Sex and the City, as well as some of the other shows she's been on this year. I think brands that are able to really be able to ride what's going on in that viral space and the trends. And of course that comes with risk. And I think that's another big thing, is being, finding the right balance of being risk adverse, but also being able to take the risk. Even Solo Stove, that was potentially a risk to work with Snoop Dogg and talk about him, you know, quitting smoking. And you know, you don't know how that could be adopted or taken in the market. But it also can really pay off. And I think these brands have been great examples of taking a little bit of that risk to make sure you're staying with what's going on with the trend and yielding positive results. I mean, you look at Skims' valuation recently. Yeah. It's just insane. She's been really keeping up with what's going on in the market, listening to her consumers. I mean, dropping the men's line, then working with the WNBA. Yeah. That's a really great example of listening to what's going on in the market and adapting and really quickly and on the fly.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Those are brands that I would say
love it.
Really exciting.
Love it. That's all I got. Thank you so much for taking some time to answer these questions and teaching us a little bit about the marketing world. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is great.